Now, the third speaker in the first half of the afternoon is Dr. Adam Chau, who is normally here in Cambridge on a Thursday afternoon teaching. He's a member of the Faculty of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies with an interest, on paper at least, in anthropology. And I say at least because he's someone whom, as I've got to know him over the last few years, always surprises me with the range of his knowledge and his understandings. He always has a new way of looking at things. And so I'm sure I'm not the only person here from Cambridge today who's looking forward to some more enlightenment. Thanks very much, Adam.
Thank you very much, Joe, for the kind introduction. And I've been very enlightened by Professor Wu's talks in the past week. And this particular talk will be engaging with some of his ideas. But it's not about absence, but rather a particular kind of presence. And as we know, absence would not mean anything without presence, and presence would not mean anything without absence or other kinds of presences. This kind of dialogue would, I hope, be productive. Let me see. In the past few years, I've been working on a particular project. I would want to call it forms of powerful writing. Basically, the driving question is why in Chinese political and religious culture, power is being expressed by forms of writing that do not derive their power from the semantic meaning, what's the content of the writing, but rather from the materiality, the context, the form, the size, hardness, softness, and its particular usage. Yes. Broadly inspired by John Austin's theory of speech acts. Basically, I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with this. He, in a series of lectures delivered at Harvard in the 50s, proposed to look at what certain sayings do. Basically, they are locutionary acts, basically the content of what you say. And then there are elocutionary acts, the things that surround and embed and propel these kind of utterances that make them do things. There are paradigmatic examples. For example, when a priest at a wedding says, "I hereby pronounce you husband and wife," he's not simply saying it. He is actually making a husband and wife, or rather just a moment before, a man and woman, but now they are married, right? Because of the power endowed in him as priest. So he called those performative, or generally the whole body of work is called speech act. In fact, almost all utterances have elocutionary aspects, but there are these paradigmatic ones. So if Queen Elizabeth is asked to christen a ship with a bottle of champagne crashing against the front of the ship, the ship will be named, I hereby name you Queen Elizabeth. But if you're not Queen Elizabeth and happen to be on the dock and does this, it will not have the effect of christening that ship, right? So therefore, he called it, if that happened, the conditions are not happy. These are called unhappiness of the conditions. So you need felicitous conditions in order for these acts to effect the result. So inspired by his speech act theory, I want to call this body of textual production in Chinese religious and political culture, text acts. I will use particular examples to illustrate my point. But these are texts, basically writing, that exude power, spellbind the viewer, and basically generally texts that act, right? Similar to what John Austin says, utterances or speech acts. Okay. And I want to say, because my focus is not on the semantic meaning of these writings, I want to look at the look of these writings. And therefore, this brings me to looking at these writings as an image ensemble, rather than looking for what each individual words or sentences or paragraphs or entire corpus would mean. As you know, during the Cultural Revolution, there were many, many big character posters. And when so many rival factions wrote big character posters and post them on the walls, gradually you run out of space. And you would go up to the first floor, second floor, sometimes third floor. The effect was, in Chinese, 铺天盖地. Basically, the big character posters are enveloping heaven and earth, right? So you are basically situated in a very, I would call it a textographic environment, milieu, right? And it's no longer important for you to know who, which danwei, which work unit, which faction wrote what. Yeah? It's enough for those who produce these to show a particular political agenda, obviously, right? But when you post the big character posters this high, it's no longer visible, the particular message. Or I would rather argue, often they're not. This is another example. So this I would call a textograph or a textographic environment. So a lot of people, actually, if you are semi-literate or illiterate, your feeling in this environment would be basically complete awe and probably fear. Or if you're just a bystander, knowing you have good class background, therefore you have nothing to fear, sort of, you know, you can just be there and 看热闹, right? Looking around and be amused. Sometimes in China, you see these big rows and rows of organizational names, which also has a textographic effect on the viewer. You would not be interested in reading how many different work units or organizations are in this building. You have a general feel for the power of this space, of this particular place, right? And if you are a particular kind of person, you might not want to get too close to this building, or you would be interested in knowing the people inside this building, right? So there are different effects on different audience. This is a big. Oh. I already mentioned, in order for these to have effect, the conditions have to be felicitous. So today, I will use talismans, particularly Taoist talismans, as an example or genre of text act. This is taken in Taiwan. On the front gate of a particular residence, you see there's a sign that says this particular flat is being protected by alarm systems, a security firm. And of course, the very heavy-duty steel door, right? So that's already 2 layers of protection. What do you need on top of that? A talisman, a red with gold, yellow, basically yellow paint written, largely illegible to the average person. Right? According to Malinowski, the anthropologist, magic or magical chants are more effective if the what he calls coefficient of weirdness is higher. Yeah, coefficient of weirdness. So talismans make use of this particular technique. These are writings that normal people cannot read. Therefore, they have very high coefficient of weirdness, and therefore they are more potent. This is just another close-up. There are all forms of talismans in the Chinese religious world. This one says, 对我生财. It's basically a passerby would say these 4 characters out of basically impulsion, because most people who are literate will automatically want to say things when they see characters. And this may take advantage of that weakness and basically say, every time a bystander would say this, you're helping this particular person to become rich. And there's another talisman. This is a talisman right next to a Guan Yin painting, which brings me to want to argue that in the Chinese religious world, at least, texts or text act or textographs trump images, even though, of course, they are particular kinds of images. This is another talisman in the middle, right next to a couplet. So illegible writing trumps legible writing. Or rather, an image needs further reinforcement. This is another example of talisman. These are all from Taiwan. Usually they are yellow paper written with cinnabar or red ink by a Taoist or other qualified priest. Okay. This is in my current office. 接引贵人符, basically it's a talisman that helps me bring important people to help me advance my career, left over by a predecessor who stayed in that office and apparently benefited from its power. There are other talismans. Basically, in terms of function, talismans protect you, expel demons or other evil forces, and to bring you good fortune. These are 3, or in that earlier case, become smart, 智慧开窍符. Often talismans are very personal, so you wear them on your body, or you put it right next to in your general environment to make you feel safe because you know you're protected. I'll go through some. There are some very modern ones. This one helps you to find Bin Laden. This helps you achieve world peace. This one is an effort to promote the use of condoms. It's called 春宵符, a talisman for your special night. And it's based on a 春画, a pornographic image, but instead of the private parts, a talisman is put there, and it actually says 致令护身平安, to protect your body and make yourself safe. And in the era of venereal disease and AIDS and other kinds of risks, this particular kind of message is for a culture that's so in tune with the culture of talisman. This must be very effective as a propaganda publicity poster. Actually promoted, I think this is a particular municipal government in Taiwan. I forgot which one. This one is to protect your computer against viruses. In the image of a little piglet is wearing a Taiwanese donkey spirit medium costume, and it says 软体服帖，硬体归顺，病毒回避，系统稳定. Basically, against all kinds of possible risks your computer is exposed to. Right. So briefly, I want to basically tell you, why do you think talismans work? Right? Taoists, of course, have their own theories. They think of talismans as a kind of tally. So talisman originally means two things that will come together. So you split these two things according to a particular pattern. The other person holds the other one, you hold this one, and when they're brought together, they match, and they will basically effectuate a particular kind of function. Right? So basically, in 道法会员 it says, with my power endowed in me, with this little piece of paper, 尺寸之指, I can command gods and ghosts to do my bidding. Okay? And they cannot not respond, because this is the function of the Fu, the talisman. And of course, you have to know how to do the talisman properly, otherwise the gods will not respond. There are many contemporary resonances with talismanic writing. One is the sign Chai to demolish that you saw in the 80s and 90s all over China because of so much demolition. And I have written a paper arguing that Chai is actually a very close equivalent of a talisman, because often the tenants would not want to leave. And one of the strategies the demolition companies use is to paint a lot of this character, demolish, demolish, on the walls, the circumference of that building, making you feel, at least symbolically, your building is dead or is going to be torn down. And this circle around it shows how definitive this command is. There's another picture. I will not go into this. This is actually not a talisman, but actually just chops to certify these are safe pork. But it looks like talisman. These are from temple festivals in Taiwan. I would say that the pork inspectors were inspired by talismanic writing in order to come up with such talisman-like certificate chops for the pork, because they very well could have designed it otherwise. But why does it look like talisman? I don't have time to go to this. One last thing about talisman is that the power is not human. Right? The talisman is what I call a potency tender. You're endowed with a particular priestly power. You write this talisman, and the talisman does not expel demons itself. It is a communication, like text messaging to God, saying, look, we have a danger here, please come and help. So the demons will be expelled by these mobilized divine forces. And then the person who hired the Taoist priest to write the talisman will feel safe and secure. So that's the complete picture of how a talisman works. But usually, in everyday life, you will only see a short path of the talismanic function, which is the person wearing or seeing the talisman itself feels his house is being protected or his person is being protected. Right? And these are just deities that Taoist priests would be mobilizing. This is, of course, a reference to, this is not a pipe, ceci n'est pas une pipe, from Marguerite. My colleague, anthropologist Robert Weller, once said when he was doing fieldwork in the 70s in Taiwan, once he visited a Taoist priest who was practicing talisman writing. But on his desk shelf, there's a talisman-like piece of paper, just like this, yellow, with some writing on it. It says on the talisman, basically, gods, I'm only practicing, please ignore. Yeah. So you see that to the Taoist priest, it's a deadly serious business. And if you are inadvertently mobilizing deities to do things that you're not actually hired to do, it would be very dangerous. So I will end the talk with this image. Thank you very much.